in here. Alright, hopefully we're up and going here with the video. So today, I know I said the other day I was going to do a quick Resto Shaman guide because there's so many terrible Resto Shamans. So this is that guide. I'll hopefully have it up on my YouTube and hopefully have it up on the stream here, definitely for you guys to see. So this is the Resto Druid, or the Resto Shaman, excuse me. You all know me that I play Resto Druid, so if I say Druid, I mean Shaman this time around. But this is my Resto Shaman, and I'm going to show you guys a few things about how to Resto Shaman. Number one, we're going to go over talents, and then we're going to go over stats, and then we're going to go over gear. So talent, stats, gear. Alright. Talents. Notice I have two different Resto specs, and I'll get into that. Talents. Your talents should be exactly these here. I don't know why I see people with Healing Grace. Reduces the threat generated by your healing spells. You don't need reduction in threat of your healing, okay? If a tank can't hold aggro off a healer, there's a huge issue. The tank has a problem. Okay, so that's rule number one. The second thing is, I see a lot of people not using Improved Earth Shield. Improved Earth Shield is a must. Increases the healing done by Earth Shield by 10% and the amount of charges by 2. It is great now that Earth Shield is working. I definitely suggest you get it. One of the talents we're going to be talking about is Tidal Waves. I kind of want to touch on this real quick. When you have Chain Heal or when you cast Chain Heal or Riptide, okay, Chain Heal and Riptide only, you have a 100% chance to lower the cast time of your Healing Wave spell by 30% and increase the critical effect chance of your Lesser Healing Wave spell by 25%. So you have a choice. You can either reduce the cast time by 30% on Greater, or you can get a 25% chance critical on your Lesser. Okay, that's very important. Your Healing Wave gains an additional 20% of your bonus healing effect, where your Lesser Healing Wave gains an additional 10% of your bonus healing effect. Also, as well in there. So, very important that you guys remember that. I'll be going over that why. Everything else down here is pretty much cookie cutter that you should be picking up. But I see a lot of people picking up Healing Grace, Improved Reincarnation. I wouldn't recommend Improved Reincarnation unless you're doing like you're in a progressive guild. You're going to need that. I also wouldn't recommend Nature's Guardian. Not something that you're going to be using a lot of. Besides, you can heal yourself. Okay, into the enhancement tree, which is the other tree that you'll be focusing in. I see so many people doing so many wrong things here. Let me start off by saying this is the correct way to do it, and anybody else who says otherwise is retarded. I see people going into Shamanistic Focus. Reduces the mana cost of your shock spells. You're a healer. You don't use shock spells. No idea why anybody's using Shamanistic Focus. Pointless. Elemental weapons. When you add this all up, it only increases your spell power by 145%. Or 145. Or is it? No, it's just plain. I lied. It's a flat 45 spell power that it increases. So you're using 3 talent points to increase your total spell power by 45. You have talent points you could be spending elsewhere. You don't need to be putting points into elemental weapons at all. The 3 things you should be getting is Ancestral Knowledge, Intellect by 10%. Obviously, more intellect, more mana, more crit. That's good to have. Thundering Strikes improves your chance to get a critical strike with all spells and attacks by 5%. So there's a 5% crit chance for your heals. And then you want Improved Shields. Increases the damage done by your Lightning Shield, which we don't use. Increases the amount of mana gained from your Water Shield orbs by 15%. And increases the healing amount done by your Earth Shield by 15%. So that's why we need to get this one, because it has 2 things in here that we both use as Resto Shamans, and that is your Water Shield and your Earth Shield. So an additional 15% healing done by Earth Shield here. So that is pretty much the spec, guys. I don't know why people go over, people go crazy with their talents. I see so many Resto Shamans who aren't even talented right. Glyphs. Water Mastery is a good one to pick up. Increase the passive mana regeneration of your Water Shield spell by 30%. So let's go ahead and open up our Water Shield spell. If I can find this. There we go. Water Shield. The caster is surrounded by 3 globes of water, granting 130 mana per 5 seconds. So that is going to increase it by 30%. Okay, so Shamans being a class that they can have mana issues. Very important to have this. Glyph of Chain Heal. Your Chain Heal heals an additional 1 target. Chain Heal is your bread and butter. Means it's what you're going to be using most of the time in a lot of fights. So that's a definite must-have there. The other one is Glyph of Earth Living. You increase the chance for your Earth Living weapon to proc by 5%. Now, Earth Living weapon, which I have right here, imbue the shaman's weapon with Earth and Life, increases healing done by 150, and each heal has a 20% chance to proc Earth Living on the target, healing an additional 652 over 12 seconds, last 30 minutes. I'm not sure that's... the actual spell. So when you put it on, like right there, it lasts 30 minutes on your mace up here. So my Royal Scepter has 30 minutes of Earth Living on it. So you will need to refresh these along with your Water Shield. I believe your Water Shield only lasts 10 minutes. So you need to keep an eye on there. I see a lot of shamans who will just not keep an eye on their Water Shield orbs or let the Earth Living fall off. Do not do that. Constantly refresh it. Make sure that's kept up. Let's go over talents real quick. Spells real quick. You must have Cleanse Spirit. This is a must have, because you don't want to put, well, people go, oh, Funky, you can just put Cleansing Totem. No, you need Wrath of Air. Your Cleansing Totem is somewhere in here if I could find it, or maybe it's not. Anyways, oh yeah, it's under water. So we're going to be using water. Water is going to be used for other stuff. So you have to have Cleanse Spirit. You're not going to be able to drop your Cleansing Totem and just hopefully it ticks on somebody. No, you want that. Oh my goodness, shamans have so much raid utility that they bring themselves that people don't even realize how much they really are a huge benefit to the raid. Earth Shield we went over. Mana Tide Totem, that's your basically your innervate, if you will. It's party wide. And it really does boost your mana quite a bit, but that is on a 5-minute cooldown, whereas Innervate is on a 3-minute cooldown. So make sure you're only probably going to get a chance to use it once during an encounter, so make sure you're doing it at the right time. Reincarnate is a passive. Nature's Swiftness, I see people not getting this in their talents too, and they'll skip over Nature's Swiftness. Nature's Swiftness is an oh shit thing. You see that tank over there and you can't get to him, you need to hit him with a greater heal. Nature's Swiftness macro, and it becomes an instant cast spell. I mean, that's amazing. You really do want that. Tidal Focus is something that you do get in your talent tree. Now, I see a lot of people not going into Tidal Focus as well, and that's fine. Tidal Focus is not really a must, but it's something that you're going to have 1 point extra left over. You might as well throw it into Tidal Focus, or Tidal Force, excuse me, because it does come in handy for certain instances and certain times. So that's another one. Totems. Let's go over totems real quick. All right, you have your earth, your fire, your water, and your air totems. Depending if you have a DK in the raid. If you don't have a DK, you're going to be using Strength of Earth totem. I use Stone Skin, even though it does not stack with Devo Aura. So if you have a Prop Paladin, you're not going to be using Stone Skin either. You're going to be wanting to use either. This is more of a situational thing. You're going to be using Earth Elemental if you can. You also maybe won't be wanting to use Stone Skin at certain points, and even Earthbind. Earthbind comes in really handy for fights like Lich King when Valks are up, and you can drop that and slow the Valks down with that. Fire Totem, and I want to say you're really going to be using Frost Resist if nobody's running it. If you have an Alien raid, you will not be using your Flame Tongue Totem because their totem will be overriding your totem, but if there's no Ellie in the raid, you will be using Flame Tongue. So really those two. If not, you will not be using Searing Totem, you will not be using Magnum Totem. You may want to proc Fire Elemental. That's about it there. Your water is where everything, this is where you're going to be swapping a lot of your totems is in water. As you can see down here, follow my mouse, I have Healing Stream macroed, I have Mana Spring macroed, and I have Mana Tide macroed. Those are all bound to my Naga on 7, 8, and 9 on the side buttons on my Naga, because I'm constantly swapping in between those three. Now, if you have a Paladin who has, if your Paladin's buffing, if you have a Holy Paladin, he should be buffing Wisdom. That way you can lay your Healing Stream totem. If you do not have one, you should probably be throwing down Mana Spring for the MP5 for everyone, because they're going to be needing that totem. You're going to have to sacrifice some healing by not being able to drop your healing or your Healing Stream totem, excuse me. But that's what you're going to be wanting to proc. Other things in here, Mana Spring, healing, your Fire Resist totem, which you're not going to be using. Your Cleanse totem, like I said, that's why you have the spell Cleanse instead of having to drop your Cleanse totem. Your air one is simple. You're simply going to be using Wrath of Air. You're not going to be using Sentry, Grounding, or Nature's Resist, unless you don't have a hunter and you're on rot face or something like that, and you really want it and you really need it. But the haste totem really, the Wrath of Air totem is so important because it makes sure a lot of classes are haste cap. A lot of classes depend on this. Boomkins, Resto Druids, I know there's tons of classes that depend on this totem alone. That's why it's so important for it to have a Resto Shaman or an Ellie Shaman in the raid, because they really need that Wrath of Air to hit. Almost a lot of casters need that to hit their haste caps, if they have one. So that's very important. Must have Wrath of Air. So that's usually the setup. This is usually the setup I use because we haven't been using prop paladins a whole lot. I've been running Stone Skin Totem. Last time we ran, I didn't have an Ellie, so I ran Flame Tongue and obviously Healing Stream and Wrath of Air. And that's basically the overview as far as talents, totems go, glyphs. Now I notice I said we were going to cover this secondary talent separately. Now, the great thing about shamans is they can do both raid healing and they can do tank healing. But to maximize your tank healing, you're going to want to run a spec kind of like this. This spec's just a little bit different. I obviously haven't fixed it yet because it still needs improved Earth Shield. Yeah, this spec needs fixed. But just bear with me. In this spec, you're going to probably want to go and maybe get elemental weapons. I dropped out of Tidal Force, things like that. You're going to want anything that has to do with a little bit more direct healing on you. Critical strikes, things of that nature. That's also where your gear comes into play, which we'll get into that to a moment. But do not go off that spec. But the thing I wanted to show you in that spec was the glyphs for that spec. Glyph of Earth Shield is honestly, if you're doing a lot of tank healing, Glyph of Earth Shield does come in handy. You could swap that out with Water Shield. Again, this is just if I'm doing 10 mans and I know I got a dickload of DPS and we're going to burn through a boss, I don't have to worry about mana as much, I'm going to roll Earth Shield. However, this can be swapped with Water Shield. Highly recommend maybe swapping those two out. If you're lower geared and you have issues with mana, definitely go Water Shield. Do not go Earth Shield. Glyph of Lesser Healing Wave. Your Healing Wave heals for initial 20% more if the target is also affected by Earth Shield. So these two kind of work hand in hand with each other. This Glyph of Lesser Healing Wave is also something that you could swap to in the other spec if you do not like Water Mastery. If you don't feel that you're going I highly suggest going and getting Lesser Healing Wave. And no, I do have Glyph of Water Mastery. Now, there's other glyphs you could pick up in here. I believe there's the Glyph of Healing Wave, your big long casted heal. Let's see if I can find it. Crafting, Inscription, Shaman, Major Glyph. Yes, here they all are. Chain, Lightning, Earth Shield, Shocking, Earth Living Weapon. Oh my goodness. Healing Stream Totem. I've actually seen people run that before. Don't get it. It doesn't tick that much where you're going to use that. Even though Healing Stream does, and it can do a dickload of healing, don't get that. There's also the Glyph of Healing Wave. Your Healing Wave spell also heals you for 20% of the healing effect when you heal someone else. No, you're not going to need a small... It's like it acts like a small beacon on you. You're not going to need that. Glyph of Riptide, increase the duration of Riptide by 6 seconds. No, you're not going to really need that, not unless it's in a movement fight, really, and you want to keep that extra healing going along. It's a very situational glyph. Do not recommend it. So like I said, these are probably the glyphs you're going to be using for those different specs. Now, having said that, let's go on to the stats. There's basically 4 stats that you're going to want to pick up with your gear and everything to do with that. First thing you're going to want to do is get haste. Haste, haste, haste. Shamans need a hell of a lot of haste. Even with haste totem down, everything else down. You see my haste? You're still going to need a hell of a lot of haste. Now, there is a thing that people are saying, well, the lesser healing, you need to get haste cap. Okay, well, people think that haste cap means that you're haste capping your chain heal. Chain heal is unhaste cappable. Do not try to cap your haste cap. Now, the reason why there is a haste cap is at 1369 is that is for Lesser Healing Wave. Right there you can see it's at a 1 second cast, which is the lowest you can get any cast in the game is 1 second. It may say that it's less, you may get it down to like a 0.08, but really the fast, because there's a global cooldown in the game, which means the fastest you can cast any spell repeatedly or one at a time is 1 second. So there is a 1 second global cooldown in the game, so that means even if your cast is below 1 second, You're not going to cast any faster than 1 second. Just remember that. Okay, so haste is the most important thing you want to do. You do want to get to that 1369 haste cap. That way you do cap Lesser Healing Wave. Very important that you do that. The next stat you're going to be wanting to pick up is spell power. You want to have tons and tons and tons of spell power. The great thing about shamans is they really have great heals right out of the box. So that means when you're leveling your shaman, you're going to be able to heal hard. Very hard. Even for that low level. They're great low level healers for that matter. They can hit like a truck with their heals. But the haste is kind of like the first thing you want to really start beefing up because you want those heals to be faster. They're still going to hit for a load, but you want them to be faster. But the next thing you really do want to focus on is your spell power. Spell power is a must. Must have. Anything with spell power is great pickup for Resto Shaman. Another thing you're going to be looking for is crit. Anything with crit and haste, such as like Bloodqueen's Choker here. Critical hit, strike rating by 65, haste rating by 60. Oh, I also want to preface my comments by saying I am not best in slot on this character. It is close, but it is not best in slot. Again, Cloak of the Burning Dust, crit haste, shoulders, crit haste, chest, crit haste. I mean, you want all crit haste stuff that you could possibly get. You will not be rolling Spirit Shamans. I see that all the time, too. Spirit does nothing for Shamans. Okay? So, really, it's spell power, haste. Those are your top two. Spell power, haste, spell power, haste are your top two. After that, it's going to be critical strike, and MP5, and intellect. Anything with intellect on it, high amount of intellect, is going to help you out. That's what you put on your shield. That's the best buff you could put on your shield is 25 intellect. Not only does intellect increase your mana, it's also going to increase your critical strike chance with your spells. So very important. But you should not gem for it or anything like that. Just get it through gear, and all the gear that you should be collecting should have intellect on it. And then MP5. I do not go and get gear that has MP5 on it. If you can avoid it, avoid it. If it comes in on a 4 set, or if it's in a best in slot piece such as your Ashen Band of Endless Wisdom, you just can't avoid it. Obviously, it's a good pickup regardless for you. But do not gem. Do not go out of your way to hit. Get gems that have MP5 on them. Do not gear around MP5. No, you will not need it. No matter how much you gem or gear. I mean, I suppose you could gem all MP5 and never go but then again, you'd have no haste and it would take an hour to cast one spell. So it's not something you want to do. Now, as far as the gear goes, like I said, guys, I am not best in slot in this character. It is close, but it is not best in slot. So the best in slot items for you are going to be your 4 set. You want to have that. Just to go over the 4 set real quick, your Riptide grants 20% spell haste for your next spell cast within 10 seconds. This is why you want to use Riptide almost every time it's off cooldown, unless you know you're getting ready to move and you kind of want to save it for that movement phase to heal somebody. But other than that, you want to have Riptide up almost off every single cooldown so you get that 2-set bonus. And that is really a nice 2-set bonus. Comes in handy. Very situational. Shamans are very situational when it comes to their spells, and that's one thing I think people really don't recognize is that they're very, very, very situationals. 4 sets and bonuses and things like that you have to procs that you have to watch out for. Your 4 set, your Chain Heal critical strikes cause a target to heal for 25% of the heal amount over 9 seconds. That's another reason why Chain Heal is your bread and butter. So, yeah, there's that. The 4 set you're going to be using is the head, the shoulders, the chest, and the pants, and the hands are your off spec. I have actually, this character I do believe has the other setup, which I think is, if I can find the piece that I'm missing, maybe it's in the bank, I can't remember. There's also the Stormbringer's gloves, but I think those are 264, those are 10-man heroics. Those are also a good pickup though. But that's going to be your 4 set, with your offset being the hands. Your neck is obviously Blood Queen's Choker. Your cape is at 25 Heroic Sanctum. Cloak of the Burning Dusk. The other one, if you're only into ICC and you're not into RS yet, the one from Vlithar Dreamwalker is a good pickup there. Braces of the Fiery Knight. Why are you wearing cloth, Funky? Because it has better stats. Yes, male wearers do wear leather and they do wear cloth because the stats are better. This is a best in slot fiery Bracers of the Fiery Knight because the stats are much higher on this than anything else in the game. Let's go down to Mace. Now, Royal Scepter is probably about third best in slot. However, Trauma being bugged and not working right now, or working with certain bosses and not others, I tend to stick with Royal Scepter for the simple fact that I don't have to deal with Trauma, and I will swap it for bosses it works, but bosses I normally just keep Royal Scepter on. Obviously, the best in slot here is going to be Valinor, Hammer of the Ancient Kings, the legendary. Let's see if we can find. Let's just go to legendaries. Is there sets collections? Isn't there one for just like legendaries? Legendary items, yes. Where is it? There's Valinor, Hammer of the Ancient Kings. That is going to be your best in slot weapon, simply because of the shield bubble that it puts out. Your shield is going to be Bulwark of Smoldering Steel from Marigar. Totems. Totem of the Calming Tides. Each time you cast Chain Heal, you have a chance to gain 234 spell power for 15 seconds. Now, Funky, why would you use that? Okay, let's go over why I'm using that one. And I do have the other one. I have the Shattered Ice Totem, and I do believe the other totem is somewhere in these bags. The one from Riptide, it stacks haste from Riptide. The only thing I don't like about that is there's sometimes you're going to be wanting to save that Riptide, and you could have a chance it could fall off. You do get more haste from it, but I kind of like Chain Heal once you cast it one time and it's up. Totem of the Calming Tides, but I do swap those out depending if there's a fight where I'm going to be not using Chain Heal a whole lot, like on Heroic Lich King, I will swap that out. And I see guys using Bizuri's Totem of Shattering Ice. The equip is the periodic damage from your Flame Shock spell grants 44 haste rating for 30 seconds, stacks up to 5 times. Sounds great in theory, right? Haste, Funky, yeah, you said haste is good. Yes, I did. However, you are a healer. You are not a DPS. The periodic damage from your Flame Shock, which means you're going to have to stop and cast Flame Shock. Now, it is an insta-cast spell, I understand that, but as a Resto Druid, here is the key. You have a 0 hit rating. Even with your Heroic Presence, you're not going to be hitting as much. You're not going to be hit capped. So if you go to proc this and it misses, you're going to have to wait before you can cast it again. Then you got to cast it again. Let's say it hits. Then you got to cast it again. You got to cast it up to 5 times. So during that time, let's say it misses 3 times. It took you 8 times to cast this total to get it to go all the way. And you're going to have to continue to cast it throughout the raid to keep it at max stacks. That is a healing loss. You shouldn't have to be focusing on keeping your stacks of haste up from this thing. I understand the argument for it, but it is not worth it. It's just ridiculous that anybody would roll this. There are 2 better options already. They're out there. You do not need this. I don't care if your haste rating is low. This is not going to improve it. You are a healer. You don't have hit rating. Stop thinking that you do. Just stop it. Moving along. Your trinkets, GTS, is amazing on Resto Shaman. Let me tell you guys. The on use. For the next 15 seconds, each time your direct healing spell heals a target, you will cause the target of your heal to heal themselves and friends within 10 yards for 402 each second for 6 seconds. And this is great for Resto Shamans because the chain heal, every time it jumps, it counts as a direct heal as well. It's the only class where you can get like this to proc like 5 people with 1 heal. So really important to have GTS. Amazingly powerful. Must have. Abacus, I see a lot of people that want to roll Solace for this. Solace of the Defeated, for those of you who don't know. Solace, let's look that up. If I can type it right. Solace of the Defeated. Increases spell power by 168 each time you cast a spell. You gain 18 mana per 5 for 10 seconds, stacks 8 times. If you are having mana issues, and I would say Solace is probably 3rd best in slot here. Obviously, the ones I'm wearing are number 1 and number 2 best in slot. Solace is a solid, it's a good pickup at number 3. Even if you don't, even if you already have these 2 items that I have, I would still go and get a Solace just in case for those fights I need it. You could swap to it mid-fight or whatever, get some extra MP5. Plus the spell power on it is pretty solid, so it's a definitely good pickup. Rings, Ashen Band, that's kind of a no-brainer. You want to get that to max, obviously. Marigar's Frigid Eye is not best in slot, however, it is 2nd best in slot. You are going to want this. It's a really good pickup. The best in slot comes out of Ruby Sanctum. Let's see if we can go find that real quick, and I will show it to you. 25-man Heroic. That would be Signet of Twilight, because if you go and compare the two, let's compare it with the Marigar's Frigideye. Or not the Signet of Twilight, I'm sorry, Ring of Regeneration. I am so sorry. You're going to lose 3 haste, however, you're going to gain 5 intellect, 5 stamina, 8 spell power, 6 MP5, and a socket. So your Marigar's Frigideye, while it is good, and while you do lose 3 haste, the 3 haste is negligible because of the stat increase across the board that Ring of Regeneration gives you. Let's go over to the boots. Honestly, these Earth Soul boots are not best in slot. I see a lot of people thinking that they are, and they are not best in slot, guys. The best in slot comes out of Ice Crown Citadel on Gunship, and they're actually leather. They are the boots of the Unnatural Growth because of the crit strike and the spell power. Now, some people like to go and pick up the ones off Festergut as well, the Plague Scientist boots, because they do have haste rating, and they do increase critical strike rating. So that's another option as well. But if you go to these are what, 140, 90 haste, and 74 crit. Whereas these are spell power 140, increased crit, or not natural growth. No, I was wrong. What am I doing? I'm thinking Resto Druid again. These are best in slot, and they are cloth. I apologize. Get my classes mixed up again. Now, I'll go over the Flame Shock Totem in the stream, but I'm doing this guide real quick. The Plague Scientist boots are best in slot. I apologize. My bad. The reason why: stamina, intellect, spell power, haste, crit. The 3 things that you really want. Let's go ahead and compare to what I'm wearing now. Yes, you're going to lose 762 armor. Armor only matters if you're taking melee hits, and you shouldn't be taking melee hits at all as a healer. But you can see the stat increase across the board. That's why you're going to want these Plague Scientist boots. Those are a lot of DPS and a lot of healer best in slot boots, so you're going to be fighting over those boots very hard to get, which is why I haven't got mine. Belt of the Blood Nova is not best in slot. Obviously, I'm not even wearing the heroic version of this. That's not even close to best in slot. Your best in slot here comes from, if I can find this one, because it should be actually the Crushing Cold Wraith belt. Again, spell power, critical strike, haste rating, stamina, intellect. And you can see there's a stat difference. Again, this is cloth. You are going to lose 36 MP5, who gives a ding dong. You're going to gain 74 crit, 18 haste, 18 spell power, 11 stamina, 11 intellect. All stuff you're going to need. That's going to be your best in slot list for everything. Interesting comment right now in the stream. So while I'm doing this guide, that's incorrect about the DPS totem. Your Flame Shock lasts 12 seconds. I believe each tick has a chance to proc it, so you just need to cast it once in order to have 220 haste rating. Then refreshing it is the easiest thing ever. No. Refreshing it is not easy. You have to have hit rating. If you miss and you have to wait to cast another heal, that is wrong. If you're busy trying to get your stacks up with the Shattered Ice Totem instead of focusing on healing, and let's say you're so focused on healing and trying to get your stacks up at the same time that one of those has to eventually, one of them breaks. I know I've run this glyph before. It is not good. Back in the day, this used to be broke, and it would just proc on its own, and it was best in slot because everyone was using it. But since then, it has been fixed. It's no longer doing that. Bizarre's Totem of Shattered Ice means you're gonna have to. It doesn't matter. You're literally gonna have to keep casting it to keep it procced. If you're missing, and if it misses once, I've seen it miss 3 times in a row. The stacks fall off. So you've lost that 220 haste rating. Pointless. Now, I want to go over haste real quick. A lot of people want to go butt-fuck nuts with their haste. Okay, you cannot cap. It is impossible to cap chain heal. I want to be very clear on that. You will never hit a 1-second chain heal. A lot of people are like, well, Funky, how much haste should I get? Because diminishing returns do come into effect sooner or later. I'd like to get my haste rating around about 14, close to 1500. Anything over that is kind of, you can go over that and really push the threshold of your chain heal. Trust me, I've seen guys who will roll CTS from Ruby Sanctum. They'll go ahead and Ruby Sanctum and they'll throw on CTS and they'll get everything they can to proc haste. And they'll use Bizarre's Shattered Ice Totem and they'll use that all and get it to proc. They'll have like 1900 haste. And oh, Funky, my chain heal's down to like a 1.3 seconds. What are you giving up? You're giving up so much stuff to get that, and it's just not worth it. The diminishing returns make it just not worth it at all. So you do not want to be doing that. There's a certain haste you want to get to, whatever you feel comfortable around. It's somewhere between 1400 and I'd say about 1500. Somewhere in between there. And like anything over that 1500, you're still going to start running into diminishing returns when you put haste on. What I mean by diminishing returns is, let's say right now I'm socketing 20 haste and I'm getting, my haste ratings go up by 20 and my cast timer goes down by, let's say, 0.1. Well, eventually you hit this diminishing return wall where you start having to stack like 3 haste gems just to make it come down 0.1. Like you start having to use more haste to bring it down further, or where you would have it at had your haste rating been lower. So keeping it below the diminishing returns is where you want to be at with your haste rating. So yeah, just want to go over a few things I see a lot of Resto Shamans doing, and our Resto Shaman did it yesterday in Raid. And here he's using Healing Wave. And as you can see here, I don't have let me put my totems down. Healing Wave is a 1.2 cast, even with, obviously I'm not in Raid right now, so I don't have all the buffs, but it's a 1.2 cast outside of Raid, even with my haste totem down. Let's go ahead and throw my mana shield on, just so I don't run out of mana. Even with tidal waves up when you cast, it does go down to a 1.1, and then obviously when you have tidal waves up, it's down to a 1.2. So yeah, it can be gotten off in a short amount of time. The problem with Greater Healing Wave is that it burns so much mana. You're going to be better off spending those tidal waves on lesser. Now, don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean you should never use Greater Heal. There are situational times where you might have to bust it out. You know your H-Pal is way out of range, or something's happened to him, or he's just been sucking the whole raid, and you've been having to cover the tanks more than you should. Obviously, you're going to have to use that, but our Resto Shaman decided he was going to cast it the entire Phase 1 of Lich King, and when he got to the ledge, he was completely had no mana, and had already dropped his Mana Tide Totem. No, you cannot be doing that. You will yourself so fast, it's ridiculous. You want to be using Lesser Healing Wave a lot more. I don't see enough Resto Shamans using Lesser Healing Wave. I see a lot of them spamming Chain Heal, which is great on certain fights. Not Marigar, Lady Death Whisper is a fight where you're going to be using a lot of Chain Heal. Some Marigar. What else is it? Fester Gut, Rot Face. Rot Face is another one where you're going to be using a lot of lesser too. Professor Putricide, BQL, fights like that. In AoE intensive fights, you're going to be using Chain Heal a lot. It is your bread and butter heal. You're going to be using it a lot. However, there's certain fights like Lich King where you're not going to be using that a whole lot in Phase 1. Now, on the ledge phases, you will be using Chain Heal. You're going to be Chain Healing all damn day on the ledge phase, pretty much. Unless you have to pick a tank up. Probably your off tank in Phase 1 when he has the Shamblings and he's got Necrotic on him and stuff like that. So, do not go burn crazy with Greater Heal. I see too many people just thinking they have to use it. You have to work with other healers that you're healing with. Obviously, the obvious setup here would be 5 healers, 1 of each class, for almost every fight. Although we usually use 4 healers, we don't use a Holy Priest anymore. Which finally, thank God, my guild decided they wanted to pay attention to me after all these years and just drop Holy because it's pointless. But in fights, there are fights like Lich King, Syndragosa, where you're gonna have to roll 5 heals, things like that. Shaman should always be in the group with the healers, or the group that has the most healers because of the Mana Tide Totem, because that only reaches the party members. So very important that the Shaman be in that group. I know a lot of people. Well, let's put the Resto Shaman in this group so I have better hit, so I can get that Heroic Presence hit rating. No. Other healers need that buff. Do not put them in the other. Do not put them in any other group. Resto Shamans usually are not the ones to burn Heroism. That's usually, if you have an Enhancement Shaman, it should be your Enhancement Shaman burning the Heroism, or your Ellie. Preferably, the Enhancement is what we always went off of in retail, because he would always time up his Ghost Wolves with burning Heroism. That way he could get them off and whatnot at the right time. So Heroism's another one you're going to be, if you're the only one in there. Obviously, Heroism. There's tons of spells that Shamans have that a lot of classes don't have. Like I said, great AoE healers. One thing I want to say, Wind Shear. See a lot of Shamans not using wind shear. There's a lot of bosses that can be interrupted. There's a lot of stuff that can be kicked in ICC, in Ruby Sanctum. Use wind shear, guys. I cannot stress this enough. I see so many healers on Warmane for so many years that do not use the full amount of their spells. Like, oh, hey, we don't need to use this totem. I'm never going to use, why would I use Fire Elemental as a Resto Shaman? That makes no sense, Funky. It's increased DPS for your raid. You're not going to be using that fire. Let's say you got an Ellie in there. You're not going to be using this for anything, and somebody's covering Frost Resist Totem. You're not going to be using anything. What are you going to do? Drop Searing Totem? No, you're going to drop Fire Elemental. Get some extra DPS out. Help your guild out. And so many people do not do this stuff, and it drives me absolutely asinine insane. Hex is another one you can use. If you have to CC somebody on Lady Death Whisper, Hex. I mean, there's tons of stuff you can do here. And I see so many people not using wind shear that it's ridiculous, especially when the boss is standing right next to him. Somebody kick this, and nobody wants to kick it. It's so easy to have that bound and use that spell. There's so much stuff that Resto Shamans have. They have a lot of little nifty, little neat things that kind of remind me of a Warlock who's just got a lot of little neat